Mr. President,
Senator from South Carolina.
I ask unanimous consent to terminate the quorum call.
I'll just do this.
Without objection.
I call up Amendment 2848 and ask that it be reported by number.
Without objection.
Senator of South Carolina, Mr. Graham, proposes an amendment number 2848 to amendment number 2360.
Mr. President.
Senator from Minnesota.
Mr. President, I call up my amendment with Senator Kelly of Arizona, number 2849, and ask that it be reported by number.
Clerk will report.
The senator from Minnesota, Ms. Klobuchar, for herself and Mr. Kelly, proposes an amendment number 2849 to amendment number 2848.
Mr. President, in addition to the many outrages of this bill, $4 trillion in debt, millions of people off of their health care, in the middle of the night it got worse. And it's something that must see the light of day. And that is, we all know it shifts $64 billion to the states that they can't pay for food assistance, on the backs of veterans, on the backs of kids, on the backs of people with disabilities. But the whole reason we were told that it was shifted over to the states was so that we would incentivize states to reduce errors. In the middle of the night, the biggest hypocrisy of the entire bill, the Republicans have rewarded states that have the highest error rates in the country. 10 states with the highest error rates just to help Alaska, which has the highest error rate. So the message to the country and the nation's governors from the Republican senators is this: raise your error rates. Get them up to 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. Make a whole bunch of mistakes when it comes to SNAP, because then you'll get more money. You won't have your cuts for a year. You won't even have them for the next year. For the rest of us, the states, all the states in the Midwest that are doing their best, they got to pay in. So senators, decide, are you going to go with your states? Are you going to reward waste, fraud, and abuse? Because with this provision that you put in there, you have done the opposite. Strike this fiscal insanity from the bill and vote yes.
Mr. President,
Senator from Arkansas.
I rise in opposition to the amendment offered by my colleague from Minnesota. We have amended the state matching funds requirement for SNAP to provide a delayed implementation date for states that have extremely high payment error rates. These states will have additional time to plan, to budget, and to adjust. This will help all states be ready for the change. By 2030, all states will have phased in and be subject to the matching funds requirement. The states involved, if we did fiscal year 24, again, the key to this is doing it in a fair way. Alaska is one of the states. Maryland's one of the states. Oregon's one of the states. New York's one of the states. Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Mexico, Florida, Georgia, Alaska, and D.C. Hardly Republican priorities. And I would do, as Amy said, I would vote what's important to your state. And if you've got a high error rate, this allows you additional time in order to get your house in order so that you will not be penalized. And with that, I ask for a yeas and the nays and encourage a positive vote. A no vote. No. A positive vote, meaning a no vote.
Is there a sufficient second?
That's a good recovery.
There appears to be. There is. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal, Ms. Blunt-Rochester, Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Brett, Mr. Budd, Ms. Cantwell, Mrs. Capito. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Cornyn. Ms. Cortez Masto. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Curtis. Mr. Daines. Ms. Duckworth. Mr. Durbin. Ms. Ernst. Mr. Fetterman. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Gallego. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Hassan. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Hickenlooper. Mr. Rono. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Husted. Mrs. Hyde-Smith. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Justice. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kim. Mr. King. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Langford. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lujan. Ms. Lummis. Mr. Markey. Mr. Marshall. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McCormick. Mr. Merkley. Mrs. Moody. Mr. Moran. Mr. Moreno. Mr. Mullen. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Murphy. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Paul. Mr. Peters. Mr. Reed. Mr. Ricketts. Mr. Resch. Ms. Rosen. Mr. Rounds. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schiff. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Scott of Florida. Mr. Scott of South Carolina. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Sheehy. Ms. Slotkin. Ms. Smith. Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Thune. Mr. Tillis. Mr. Tuberville. Mr. Van Hollen. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warnock. Ms. Warren. Mr. Welch. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Young. Senators voting in the affirmative: Baldwin, Bennett, Blunt Rochester, Cantwell, Coons, Cortez Masto, Duckworth, Durbin, Fetterman, Gallego, Gillibrand, Hassan, Hickenlooper, Hirono, Kane, Kim, King, Klobuchar, Merkley, Murphy, Murray, Padilla, Paul, Peters, Reed, Schatz, Schumer, Shaheen, Slotkin, Smith, Warner, Warren, Welch, Whitehouse, Wyden. Ms. Lummis, aye. Ms. Murkowski, aye. Senators voting in the negative: Banks, Barrasso, Blackburn, Bozeman, Britt, Budd, Capito, Cassidy, Collins, Cornyn, Cotton, Kramer, Crapo, Cruz, Curtis, Daines, Ernst, Fisher, Graham, Grassley, Haggerty, Hawley, Hoven, Husted, Hyde-Smith, Johnson, Justice, Kennedy, Langford, Lee, Lujan, Marshall, McConnell, McCormick, Moody, Moran, Moreno, Mullen, Ossoff, Ricketts, Risch, Rounds, Schmidt, Scott of South Carolina, Sheehy, Thune, Tillis, Tuberville, Wicker, Young. Ms. Rosen. Ms. Rosen, aye. Mr. Booker. Mr. Booker, aye. Ms. Murkowski. Ms. Murkowski, no. Ms. Lummis. Ms. Lummis, no. Ms. Alsobrooks. Ms. Alsobrooks, aye. Mr. Van Hollen. Mr. Van Hollen, aye. Mr. Warnock. Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan, no. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Heinrich, no. Mr. Schiff. Mr. Schiff, aye. Mr. Blumenthal, aye. Mr. Markey, aye. Mr. Scott of Florida, aye. Mr. Kelly, aye. Mr. Sanders, aye.
The yeas are 45, the nays are 55. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. President.
The Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I raise a point of order against page 1, lines 3 to 5 of the pending amendment, which violates Section 313B1A of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974.
The point of order is sustained. The text will be stricken.
Am I up now? President.
Senator from Oregon.
Mr. President, it's been an extraordinary period here in the Senate. Not a good one, because its families lose and billionaires win. We kept advocating, join us in a better vision for America in which families thrive and billionaires, they pay their fair share for a change. Thank you so much to the floor staff for your steadfast support during the night. The parliamentarian team led by Elizabeth Dunna has been amazing, but I want to give particular thanks to the budget team, the revenue team, and the minority leaders team who worked so carefully together, competently, expertly. But the result is bad for America. We need to come back and have a vision in which we lift up opportunity and hope for everyone in America, not this strategy of more wealth for the best off while cutting the programs of health care, 16 million people losing health care, to fund tax breaks for billionaires, 4 million children going hungry, to fund tax breaks for billionaires. This is morally wrong, and we will keep fighting to the very end to say we can put America on a better course for this generation and the next.
Mr. President,
Senator from South Carolina.
the other side of the story. But we agree on this. A lot of people work very hard on both sides of the aisle. Tensions have been high at times, but we're at the end now. And to all those who made this possible, thank you for your hard work. I'd like to make 5 very brief points about what I think is good about this bill. It's the most consequential border security package in the history of our country. It's $175 billion. It does several things. It hires more ICE agents. It finishes the wall and increases detention beds by 100,000. And let me tell you why that's important. In September 2022, Mr. Ibarra, who was convicted of killing Laken Riley, the young lady in Georgia, not far from where I lived, was apprehended, but he was paroled. And why was he paroled? Subject was paroled due to detention capacity at the Central Processing Center in El Paso, Texas. They didn't have a bed for him, so they let him go. 18 months later, approximately, he kills Laken Riley.
Senator's time's expired.
This bill fixes that and a bunch of other stuff. Thanks.
The question occurs on Amendment 2848. Is there a sufficient second? There is. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks. Thank you, sir. Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Banks. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Rochester. Mr. Booker. Sir. Thank you. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Britt. Thank you. Mr. Budd. Ms. Cantwell. Mrs. Capito, Mr. Cassidy. Thank you. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Cornyn. Ms. Cortez Masto. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Curtis. Mr. Daines. Ms. Duckworth. Mr. Durbin. Ms. Ernst. Mr. Fetterman. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Gallego. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Hassan. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Hickenlooper. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Husted. Mrs. Hyde-Smith. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Justice.
Aye.
Mr. Kane. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kim. Mr. King. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Lankford. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lujan. Ms. Lemus. Mr. Markey. Mr. Marshall. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McCormick. Mr. Merkley. Mrs. Moody. Mr. Moran. Mr. Marino. Mr. Mullen. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Murphy. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Paul. Mr. Peters. Mr. Reed. Mr. Ricketts. Mr. Risch. Ms. Rosen. Mr. Rounds. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schiff. Sir, thank you. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Scott of Florida. Mr. Scott of South Carolina. Thank you. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Sheehy. Ms. Slotkin. Ms. Smith. You got me, right? Yes, sir. Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Thune. Mr. Tillis. Mr. Tuberville. Mr. Van Hollen. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warnock. Ms. Warren. Mr. Welch. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Young. Mr. Sullivan. Senators voting in the affirmative: Banks, Barrasso, Blackburn, Bozeman, Britt, Budd, Capito, Cassidy, Cornyn, Cotton, Kramer, Crapo, Cruz, Curtis, Daines, Ernst, Fisher, Graham, Grassley, Haggerty, Hawley, Hoeven, Husted, Hyde-Smith, Johnson, Justice, Kennedy, Lankford, Lee, Lummis, Marshall, McConnell, McCormick, Moody, Moran, Marino, Mullen, Murkowski, Ricketts, Risch, Rounds, Schmidt, Scott of Florida, Scott of South Carolina, Sheehy, Sullivan, Thune, Tuberville, Wicker, and Young. Senators voting in the negative: also Brooks, Baldwin, Bennett, Blumenthal, Blunt Rochester, Booker, Cantwell, Collins, Coons, Cortez Masto, Duckworth, Durbin, Fetterman, Gallego, Gillibrand, Hassan, Heinrich, Hickenlooper, Hirono, Kane, Kelly, Kim, King, Lujan, Markey, Murphy, Murray, Ossoff, Padilla, Paul, Peters, Reed, Rosen, Sanders, Schatz, Schiff, Schumer, Shaheen, Slotkin, Smith, Tillis, Van Hollen, Warner, Warnock, Warren, Welch, Whitehouse, and Wyden. Ms. Klobuchar, no. Mr. Merkley, no.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative and the amendment is agreed to.
Mr. President, I know of no further amendments.
Other further amendments?
No further amendments.
If not, the clerk. The question is on Amendment 2360. As amended. Is there a sufficient second? There is. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks. Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Banks. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Blunt Rochester. Mr. Booker. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Britt. Mr. Budd. Ms. Cantwell. Mrs. Capito. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Cornyn. Ms. Cortez Masto. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Curtis. Mr. Daines. Ms. Duckworth. Mr. Durbin. Ms. Ernst. Mr. Fetterman. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Gallego. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Hassan. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Hickenlooper. Ms. Arono. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Husted. Mrs. Hyde-Smith. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Justice. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kim. Mr. King. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Langford. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lujan. Ms. Lummis. Mr. Markey. Mr. Marshall. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McCormick. Mr. Merkley. Mrs. Moody. Mr. Moran. Mr. Moreno. Mr. Mullen. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Murphy. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Paul. Mr. Peters. Mr. Reed. Mr. Ricketts. Mr. Risch. Ms. Rosen. Mr. Rounds. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schiff. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Scott of Florida. Mr. Scott of South Carolina. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Sheehy. Ms. Slotkin. Ms. Smith. Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Thune. Mr. Tillis. Mr. Tuberville. Mr. Van Hollen. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warnock. Ms. Warren. Mr. Welch. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Young.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the amendment, as amended, is agreed to. Now, the clerk will read the title of the bill for the third time.
Calendar number 107, H.R. 1, an act to provide for reconciliation pursuant to Title 2 of H. Con. Res. 14.
The question occurs on passage of the bill as amended. Is there a sufficient second? There is. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks. Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Banks. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Rochester. Mr. Booker. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Britt. Mr. Budd. Nope. Thank you. Ms. Cantwell. Mrs. Capito. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Cornyn. Ms. Cortez Masto. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Curtis. Thank you. Mr. Daines. Ms. Duckworth. Mr. Durbin. Yes, sir, I do. Thank you. Ms. Ernst. Mr. Fetterman. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Gallego. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Hassan. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Hickenlooper. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Husted. Mrs. Hyde-Smith. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Justice. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kennedy. Thank you. Mr. Kim. Yeah, I do. Thank you. Mr. King. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Lankford. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lujan. Ms. Lummis. Mr. Markey. Mr. Marshall. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McCormick. Mr. Merkley. Mrs. Moody. Mr. Moran. Mr. Marino. Mr. Mullen. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Murphy. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Paul. Mr. Peters. Mr. Reed. Mr. Ricketts. Mr. Risch. Ms. Rosen. Mr. Rounds. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schiff. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Sheehy. Ms. Slotkin. Ms. Smith. Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Thune. Mr. Tillis. Mr. Tuberville. Mr. Van Hollen. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warnock. Ms. Warren. Mr. Welch. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Young.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being evenly divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative. The bill as amended is passed. Okay. Pursuant to the order for February 29, 1960, the hour of 12 noon having arrived, the Senate having been in continuous session since yesterday, the Senate will suspend for a prayer by the Senate chaplain.
Let us pray. Eternal, ever-blessed God, help our senators to walk on your path for the glory of your name. Help them to walk with humility so that they will strive to be servants of the people. Help them to walk with forgiveness so that they will forgive as they desire to be forgiven. Help them to walk with courage so that nothing will deflect them from the way they ought to take. Help them to walk with endurance so that nothing may daunt or discourage them until they reach their goal. Lord, help them to walk with loyalty so that nothing will ever seduce their hearts from their devotion to you. We pray in your loving name. Amen.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. President. President, Senate and quorum call.
We are not.
Okay. Mr. President, it's been a long road to get to today. More than a year ago, groups of Republican senators and staff began meeting to lay the groundwork for extending tax
not austerity and exclusion. Until we face these deeper truths, we'll continue addressing symptoms rather than causes, perpetuating the very injustices we claim to want to solve and that so many of us came into this place to sort out.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much. Madam Deputy Speaker, and I rise to support the Reason Amendment and vote against this bill because of actually the abandoned generation that this legislation will cause. And that's those young people with disabilities and life-limiting conditions who are currently on children's DLA, who normally transfer to PIP at the age of 16, but this bill completely ignores them and forgets about them. The usual process being that around the 16th birthday, DWP will send an invitation to claim PIP, but it is then up to the parent or the young person themselves actually to apply within a time limit of 28 days. And this bill does nothing to redress that. It's also a process of mandatory self-application, so there's no automatic conversion for a child with a disability or indeed a life-limiting condition already entitled to DLA actually moving on to a PIP claimant. But what this bill and the concession that was made actually makes worse in regard to that stricter future eligibility criteria, that as from the 22nd of November, new PIP claimants must meet the 4-point single activity daily living test. So for those young people with a disability, with that life-limiting condition who are in currently receipt of children's DLA who would normally have transferred to PIP, come November 26, their condition must be such that it enables them to reach that 4-point eligibility test. So for those young people this place keeps talking about and other devolved legislations keeps encouraging to stay in education, support them through special educational needs, are now telling them, come 16, if your condition does not meet a 4-point criteria, you will not be in receipt of that personal independence payment. That personal independence payment that is a door opener for their families, that actually allows them to access care support, allows those young people, if they do look to further their education or their employment, to access mobility and support schemes, that allows those young people with those disabilities and life-limiting conditions that hope, that dream to actually be eligible and to be supported to enter the workforce. Now, if you're a young person who come the 22nd of November 2026 doesn't have a condition that will allow you to reach that 4-point criteria, that will be denied you. I'll give way briefly.
I want to share the words of young disabled children from my constituency. They said to me this weekend, "Don't speak for us, speak with us." And that really struck me, because so often in this place decisions are made about people without ever really listening to them. Will the member agree, if we are serious about a just and compassionate welfare system, then let us honour those words. Don't speak for us, speak with us, and better still, listen.
Thank the member for that intervention. And what I will say, Madam Deputy Speaker, I did meet with those young people, met with an organisation called Brave Hearts Northern Ireland, who represent a cohort of young people with congenital heart defects who are at that transitional stage. And they were saying to me about the real concerns, actually not just concerns, the actual fear that are now in their young people who have been looking forward to that opportunity to go to university, to get into training courses, and to seek employment, but still require those additional supports and those needs. But also for MENCAP, who have highlighted that due to the Child Disability Allowance, which is currently between children aged 0 to 15, the main childhood disability benefit of 166,000 children with learning disabilities, autism, Asperger's, who retain the total monetary value of their child DLA awarded or increased when transitioning to PIP. MENCAP is now concerned that this number would decrease because of for those young people not being able to achieve that 4-point eligibility criteria. Madam Deputy Speaker, and for the sake of those young people that we all come to this place to support, to give them a future, to give them hope, and our young people going through special educational needs with disabilities and with life learning disabilities. Madam Deputy Speaker, I implore the Government to withdraw this bill now, go back, engage and co-produce something that meets the needs of their country and of our young people.
Andrew Pakes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It turns out in a long, hot, sweaty day like this, one of my hearing aids has collapsed in the middle of this session, so I'm only half hearing you, so I'm glad you did call me, didn't you? Thank you. It's a an embarrassment. Firstly, Madam Deputy Speaker, that would be very audacious. It is a great privilege to speak in this debate alongside so many passionate advocates who want to get this reform right. I think all of us on this side, whether we may have a difference of opinion on a point of policy, came into this House to make a difference and fix the welfare system, to liberate and create opportunities for people. So I want to thank the Secretary of State for her statement yesterday and the welcome news of the PIP assessment review as moving us forward. It is vital, as others have said, we engage those most affected by a failed welfare state in designing a successful welfare state. And we've put off change for too long. That is particularly true when it comes to young people. Madam Deputy Speaker, if politics is about choices, then condemning nearly 1 million young people to the scrap heap of unemployment was the choice of the party opposite. So I want to focus my main contribution on how these changes can affect young people and their life chances. Full employment and good quality jobs have been a central part of Labour's most successful governments. That's why fixing Britain's broken system of social security must be a priority for this Labour government. There is no dignity in denying young people the opportunity to learn, earn, or making a better life for themselves. And I'm reminded as we approach the 80th anniversary of the 1945 Labour landslide, we must remember previous governments that have dealt with such big challenges. Work was essential to that great 1945 Labour government. William Beveridge's landmark report in 1942 laid the foundation for Labour's post-war welfare state, an NHS, free education for all and full employment. The vision of Labour's leaders like Attlee, Morrison and Bevin was that every citizen would live a life free from want, squalor, disease or poverty with meaningful help when times were tough. But in return, every citizen was expected to play a full part in the social and economic life of the nation. But looking at the high level of people not in education, employment or training, NEETs in that terrible phrase, in my constituency, I can see an economy that is still letting people down. I can see a mental health system that is letting young people down, and I can see an NHS system that is trapping too many young people on a life of benefits. So can I ask my right honourable friend, when we come to bringing the debate together later, can they confirm in her response that we will deliver the employment support young people need, and that we will simplify the way benefits work and the way job centres work so that young people get the support they deserve? And will she work with the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care to fix our broken mental health system so that young people have a hand up rather than being pushed down? And of course, our values should be about compassion, and our social security system should be about dignity for those unable to work or who need support. That's why I welcome the protections for those people already on PIP that have been announced. And I've also listened a lot to a common theme in this debate, and I'd like to ask the front bench about this, which is we've heard lots of people raising concern, not that the TIMS review will happen, because that begins to embed co-production, as the front bench and many people in this House have said. But there are questions, I think, legitimately to ask about timing and delivery about that in terms of the legislation.
Gentlemen, give way.
Oh, yes.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way, and I'm very pleased that he could hear my desire to come and intervene. Does he share my concern that the TIMS review is too slow and will not conclude in its current timetable until next autumn? And does he agree with me that the TIMS review should be accelerated so a package of measures that have been co-produced with disabled people, their carers, including young people, can be implemented in November 2026?
I thank my honourable friend for an important point. I would, if possible, give my right honourable friend, the Minister, Duracell batteries to turbocharge his work in this area. Oh, yeah.
For giving way. And I want to make this point to him, that he and others across the House during this debate have raised concerns that the changes to PIP are coming ahead of the conclusions of the review of the assessment that I will be leading. We've heard those concerns, and that is why I can announce that we are going to remove the Clause 5 from the bill at committee, that we will move straight to the wider review, sometimes referred to as the TIMS review, and only make changes to PIP eligibility activities and descriptors following that review. The government is committed to concluding the review by the autumn of next year.
Point of order, Andy MacDonald.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd be very grateful for your clarification. We've just heard that a pivotal part of this bill, Clause 5, is not going to be effective. So I ask the question, what are we supposed to be voting on tonight? Is it the bill as drawn or another bill? Because I'm confused, and I think people in this chamber will need that clarification.
I thank the honourable member for his point of order. He will be aware that that is not a matter for the chair, and the vote will be on the bill as it stands. We've had a very clear undertaking from the dispatch box as to what will happen at committee. Andrew Pakes.
Deputy Chair, for someone who sits in a party which often debates Clause 4, I received today's news about Clause 5 welcome. I think it addresses many of the concerns honourable members on both sides of the House, particularly our side of the House, have made, because there is an urgency to moving forward with this legislation and change, because today's system is broken. The legacy of the last government is shocking. There are 2.8 million people outside the labour market due to long-term sickness. That is the same as the populations of Birmingham, Leeds, Sheffield and Liverpool combined. 1 in 8 young people are outside of education, employment or training. The UK is the only G7 economy where sickness rates are higher than before COVID, and we've heard from others, health and disability-related benefits will cost around £100 billion over the next 4 years. Madam Deputy Speaker, this has a massive impact on our national resources. Economic inactivity not only holds back growth and makes us all poorer, it also blights the lives of those without work. That's why those of us on this side believe tackling worklessness is not just an economic case, it is a moral crusade. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, in drawing my conclusions to an end, I want to see real support for people to get skills, opportunities and jobs. I want to see every 18 to 21-year-old offered a life off benefits and an apprenticeship or training. I want to see real support for people with mental health so they can access the care they want. We need Labour's Employment Rights Bill fully implemented to change the culture of work so that employers work with disabled people to create the opportunities we need. But most of all, Madam Deputy Speaker, we need a system of social security that is there for everyone with a genuine need, so that no one falls into poverty because they lose their job, and everyone who can work is given a path back into employment.
Bal Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise today not just with grave concern, but with absolute conviction, and I will speak in support of the reason amendment from my honourable friend, the member for York Central, and with a plea for the government to pause, think, reflect and bring back something that will work for the betterment of disabled people. Disabled people, this whole debate
I'm afraid to say, and I've been saddened to hear, has shed, not all members, people have been presented in a negative light. Disabled people are not a burden on society. They are part of society, and they make an invaluable contribution to our society as it stands. And the support that they receive allows them to make that invaluable contribution. If this bill is passed, it will do unconscionable damage to disabled people, their carers and families who are already on the brink of in this cost of living crisis. It will deepen poverty, increase hardship, and undo decades of progress in social security. And I urge the government to withdraw now and come back when it is fit for purpose. Myself and my Independent Alliance colleagues have been clear and consistent. We are acutely aware of the devastation this bill would cause. We have fought and will fight it every step of the way until a fit-for-purpose bill is before us. Yet today we are being asked to sign off on billions in cuts without any credible data. And we have a moving target where elements of the bill that are published will no longer apply when it comes back to this place. The department's analysis, we've heard 150,000 people will be pushed into poverty, maybe more than 20,000 children. And despite the talk of concessions, which were rushed out and tweaks made, they do not change the core injustice. This government wants to create a two-tier welfare system where today's disabled people get help, but tomorrow's they are discarded. New PIP claimants will have to pass a cruel new threshold to qualify for PIP compared to existing claimants. My question to the Secretary of State is, please can you explain to my constituents in Dewsbury and Backley who designed this four-point system and who defined the criteria by which somebody would qualify and not qualify?
Would the member give way?
I will give way.
Would the member agree that now is the time that the government actually needs to confirm what we're voting on? U-turn after U-turn, I believe members are confused.
I thank the honourable friend for his intervention. I will accept a government who listens and adapts and changes their approach in light of new evidence that is put before them. So I would congratulate the government for improving on the proposals. And I don't question the core intentions. I really don't. The waste and the unmanageable and welfare state and how it has been mismanaged for 14 years to lead us to this point absolutely must be assessed and improved. But it can't be at the expense of support to the most vulnerable in our society. The bill is moving on to carers, so it's not just disabled people that this bill will impact, but carers. It slashes 500 million from the carers allowance, the largest real terms cut since the benefit was introduced in 1976. Carers save this country tens of billions of pounds in unpaid labour. Nearly half of them already live in poverty. Is this really the thanks that they deserve? And it gets worse. If an existing claimant loses their PIP on reassessment, which happens all too frequently due to assessor errors, they will be treated as a new claimant and subject to the stricter rules. This includes anyone moving from DLA to PIP. It is punitive, it is regressive, and it will erode trust in the entire system. We are told there will be consultation, but what consultation happens when a bill is pushed through in a single week without adequate scrutiny or engagement with those most affected? The principle of nothing about without us has been flagrantly ignored. We've heard, according to Scope, that the extra cost of living with a disability is already nearly £1,100 a month. That is not covered by PIP. By 2029, this is expected to top £1,200. Yet under this bill, those same people will be expected to survive without the support that they rely on. The government expects disabled people to shoulder £15,000 a year in extra cost and offers them less and less. The public sees through this. Only 27% support these reforms. Nearly half of those surveyed believe they will worsen the health of disabled people, and over half expect more pressure on the NHS. These cuts will make people sicker, more isolated and more dependent on an already overstretched service. The politics of this is damning. This cannot be about politics. This must be about the people that we are here to serve. So please, 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 go back and wait for the consultation to be completed and integrate the learnings and the feedback from the people affected so that this bill and this legislation can actually make a positive contribution to our society and not a negative one. Thank you.
Imran Hussain.
Madam Deputy Speaker. And Madam Deputy Speaker, let me begin by saying there's no denying the ideological austerity we've seen by the previous government for the last 14 years has led to absolute decimation of our services, devastation of our communities, and extreme poverty as well as an economic mess. So I get that this government has to make some extremely difficult decisions. But the central point in this debate is this: we cannot balance the books on the backs of some of the most vulnerable in our society. It's not the fair thing to do, it's not the right thing to do, and simply put, it is not the Labour thing to do. Madam Deputy Speaker, again today, many of us in good conscience, and let me say this, Madam Deputy Speaker, we do not, on these benches, who oppose this, do not come from the same place as members opposite. We come from a place of sincerity. Members opposite on the Tory benches come from, again, political game playing. And we continue to come from that place of sincerity. But what is disrespectful, and continues to be disrespectful, to backbenchers in particular and members on this side, is the way we are piecemeal fed things. Even at this late stage, whilst I welcome the previous concessions and I welcome the concession today. But the reality is this: for months we have been talking about this, for months. And we could have been engaged in that process. We approached it with good faith. And again, it makes a further mockery of a process that will result in hundreds of thousands of people being pushed into poverty. The timescale that we have been given already lacks respect that this democratic House should be afforded. But now, this piecemeal of information we are being leaked, frankly, we are being asked to rely on the goodwill of ministers. Now, I have the greatest deal of respect for honourable members. I have the greatest deal of respect. But we, as backbenchers, should be afforded the same dignity. Because we have all been elected on one premise. You know, my constituency of Bradford East suffers from some of the worst health inequalities, the worst child poverty. Over half of all children who live in my constituency are living in absolute poverty. I have to go back and face them. Yeah. The reality is, the bill as it stands today, regardless of what ministers tell us, the bill as it stands today is the same bill it was a week ago, the same bill it was when it was released. That's what we are voting on. We can discuss the concessions next week if this bill makes it.
Pull the bill.
But the bill today must be pulled.
Pull it.
Because I cannot go back to my constituency and tell them, through some concessions that were not in a bill, I voted for it, even though tomorrow this could add to deepening the poverty that people on my streets face. That is not what I was elected on. Madam Deputy Speaker, of course I will.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Gentleman, and he's making the correct and most powerful point
with that this is not the best way of making law, and this is hugely disrespectful to all sides of the House, irrespective of position. Would he also agree with me that that is compounded by the woefully inadequate time being set aside for committee consideration of this bill? Next week, and third reading, very truncated. We are all absolutely dizzy by the amount of U-turns and concessions. He is right. Much better to withdraw the bill, start again, bring it back in September.
Absolutely, and I'll come on to that point. I've already touched on the point in terms of a bill of this seismic nature. Let's be frank. I've spent a decade in this place. I've never seen a bill of this seismic nature with these direct consequences being rushed through in 1 week. And let's be clear, the House, this is a money, the motion that goes to the House of the Lords is going to be a money motion. It will not allow the House of Lords to make any amendments and bring this back. So again, the ministers have, of course I will.
Would it not be a very sensible way forward if the House simply passed the excellent reasoned amendment put forward by the honourable member for York, and we parked the issue there, so we would then have the necessary consultation and preparation for a more effective bill?
I again say this. Courageous political leadership sometimes demands admitting we got it wrong. Like we did in the winter fuel allowance. Nobody out there, I mean, I sincerely think people respect you when you get something wrong and you come back. The concession after concession is admission enough that we have got this wrong. And my personal view remains that it is dignified today for the government to say we will go with the reasoned amendment and we will come back, we will go have meaningful consultation with disability groups, and then we will come back. And I again say everything I say out of absolute sincerity. And I want to finish by saying this, a point that's been made by honourable members on both sides of the House, because many are acting in good faith for the collective good of the people we represent. And the point is this: all of us will have to go back to our constituencies and justify the decision we make today. I have always promised my constituents in Bradford East that I will never vote for anything that will increase poverty, deprivation or deepen the health inequalities in my constituency, because it is not this place that sends me to Bradford. It is the people of Bradford that sends me to this place, and I will remain true to them, and I will remain counted for them, and I will make sure that their voice is heard. I will be voting for the amendment, and I will be voting against the bill today.
Debbie Chadwick.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and may I say what an excellent and powerful speech to follow. We should all be here to stand up for the people who, the dignity of people who need us to stand up for them. I know what it means to become disabled. 11 years ago, I developed Guillain-Barré syndrome. It happens to 1 in 100,000 people, and unfortunately, I ended up totally paralysed for 3 months, and then fortunately made a full recovery over the next couple of years. And that was an insight into what it's like to become disabled. I went from full health to total dependence overnight and lost the ability to move for 3 months. Fortunately, I was lucky and I recovered. But I remember those early days. Very vividly, and what it was like to suddenly learn to live with a disability. I remember, for example, having to have some clicking contraption, a hook, to be able to grab my socks and get dressed in the morning. And that's one of those examples that's already been highlighted today of the extra costs and challenges that people living with disabilities face. Personal independence payments are a lifeline, and they enable people with disabilities and long-term health conditions to live independently, participate in society, and, crucially, stay in work if they can. Wales, Madam Deputy Speaker, will be hit hard by this proposal. In Wales, we have higher rates of long-term illness and disability. In rural areas, the cost of living with a condition is even higher. And these changes will hit hardest where communities and people are struggling to cope as it is. The government's so-called climb down does not fix this. Delaying the stricter criteria until 2026 does not make the policy fairer. It just creates a two-tier system. From 2026, someone newly diagnosed with a condition will not be entitled to the same support that someone with the same condition already receives today. I remember when I was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, I was added to a Facebook group with lots of people who were had been struggling to live with the consequences of it, and they talked about how they coped. And clearly the people being added to that group today will be in an even worse situation, and that's quite frankly immoral. If the government was serious about trying to reduce the welfare bill, it would be focusing on fixing the issues in health and social care, tackling the root causes of chronic ill health, or providing good jobs across Wales. In Wales, Labour have been running the healthcare service for over 25 years. 800,000 people, that's almost a third of the entire population, are stuck on an NHS waiting list. And more than 9,000 people have been waiting over 2 years to start treatment. And that's hundreds of thousands of people who are unable to work as normal because they are languishing on waiting lists. There are so many people we know in Wales who are not getting the health care they need. And our welfare system as a whole was built by Welsh politicians, by Nye Bevan, David Lloyd George. In Wales, we know how to fight for each other, and we don't forget our roots, right? But they have. Right? It was shameful to see Welsh Labour politicians sitting there on the front bench. People in Wales will be disgusted by changes being made to disability benefits and PIP claimants that will make things harder for people with disabilities. Yes, of course, I'll give way.
Thank you, and I thank the honourable member for giving way. On that note of tackling the root causes of illness and poor health, will the honourable gentleman agree with me that this substantial package of mental health support announced by the Welsh Labour government this weekend, including £5.6 million to tackle the long waiting list for children awaiting diagnosis for conditions such as ADHD and autism, is to be welcomed? Hear, hear.
So I think we all know that a lot of this is political posturing, and that this bill is not going to fix the underlying problems we have in Wales. Right? Many of the problems we have in Wales are caused by the Conservatives closing down our industries 40 years ago. Right? And Wales has been waiting for a response since then. This isn't it. Picking on the vulnerable is what the Conservatives do, but it's not what the Welsh do. And that's why we voted them out last year. Do not punish people for getting sick. Do not divide disabled people into first and second-class citizens. Do not vote with the government today.
Paula Barker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I want to start by saying how shocked I am that the Minister has just intervened near the end of this debate to say he will be removing the whole of Clause 5 from this bill. And whilst grateful for the concessions, this has further laid bare the incoherent and shambolic nature of this process. It is the most unedifying spectacle that I have ever seen. And as we have just heard, we are voting tonight on the bill as it stands on the order paper, not as amended. And I'm really, really sorry to say this, Madam Deputy Speaker, but when it's not written down, it's not worth the paper it's written on. We were promised a Hillsborough law by April this year, and nothing has come to fruition. So it is with sadness that... No, I won't. It's with sadness that I will vote for my honourable friend's reasoned amendment tonight, and I will vote against this bill. And I implore my government to do the right thing, to pause, to take a breath, and let us get this right. Because before entering Parliament, I served in local government, the trade union movement and working people my entire life. Service matters deeply to me, and I see it as my job to do exactly that as a Member of Parliament. I am a passionate believer in the dignity of labour, of secure, well-paid work being a route out of poverty towards opportunity and a life free from fear. And I regret to say that this bill will create poverty and it has already induced fear. I think everyone in this House believes that we need reform in our welfare system, but we must be honest. This bill before us today is not reform. It is simply cuts, which have been brought forward to fill an economic black hole. In Liverpool City region, nearly 30% of residents are disabled, more than 10% above the national average. Liverpool also has one of the highest disability rates in the country, and our region already experiences some of the highest poverty rates in the UK. Even with concessions, this bill is still cuts, not reform, and will see 150,000 people pushed further into poverty and create a stark disparity in our welfare state for disabled people. And despite a commitment to co-production, there is nothing that commits the government to ensure the PIP assessment review findings has any bearing on this legislation. Over the last few weeks, we have heard a lot about lack of time to scrutinise legislation when debating another bill in this place. Yes, here we are, with a bill that has concessions which are not actually on the face of the bill, because there's been no time, and there will only be 8 days between second and third reading. That is truly a lack of time to scrutinise proposed legislation.
My honourable friend give way.
I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. She makes a very good speech. But we are here as legislators, and would my honourable friend agree with me? The fact that we have been denied the opportunity to scrutinise denies us the opportunity to make this right for disabled people.
I thank my honourable friend for her excellent intervention, and I absolutely concur with her views. So, colleagues, we must be crystal clear on what we are voting for tonight. We are voting for the bill as it stands, unamended. The late changes combined with the compressed parliamentary timetable means MPs will have just a single day to debate and consider amendments. And the fact the bill is a money bill also means it will not be subject to amendments from the House of Lords. Our movement is at its best. Our movement at its best is the rising tide that lifts all boats. Not some, but all. I cannot, in good faith, look at my constituents of Liverpool Wavertree in the eye and tell them this bill would improve their lot, because quite frankly, it won't.
Anne Davies.
Madam Dirprwy Llefarydd. I've heard so much in this chamber today, some really passionate personal speeches, and I thank all honourable members for their testament and contribution. But the Universal Credit and Personal Independent Payment Bill is a direct attack on the ill and disabled people, and just to cut costs. The arbitrary restricting eligibility for PIP and cutting the health element on universal credit will have a devastating, lasting consequences. Whatever this Labour government claims, there is neither fairness nor compassion in its approach towards welfare. And it certainly isn't fair or compassionate for the people of Wales, who will be disproportionately impacted by these measures. And let me thank organisations, including Policy and Practice and the Bevan Foundation, for their vital work in filling absence of data for Wales, which this UK government has all but refused to provide. 4 out of 10 local UK authorities worst hit by these welfare cuts are in Wales, so 4 out of the 10, impacting 6.1% of the Welsh population at a cost of £470 million for our communities. And in Carmarthenshire alone, the economic impact will be nearly £17.5 million. And too many people will suffer. My constituents will suffer. People like... By all means, yes.
And I thank the member giving way. And there's just a point of clarification. She mentions her constituents suffering. The government has withdrawn Clause 5, but Clause 6 leaves all this legislation eligible to Northern Ireland. So is the government going to put a barrier down the Irish Sea in regards to PIP payment now?
Thank you. I'll allow the Minister to answer that in the closing statement. I couldn't possibly comment. But I will comment on Claire. She has several disabilities, including arthritis. She currently receives PIP, which has helped her build on her master's degree in equality and diversity in work, and allowed additional support, like the ability to have a carer accompany her when necessary. Ms Jacks does not have 4 points in any one part of the daily living component. Versus Arthritis has calculated that 79% of people that claim PIP in Wales for arthritis alone score fewer than 4 points, and that's nearly 17,000 people. And it's not just claimants. MENCAP, which has already been mentioned here, has estimated that over 13,000 carers may lose their carers allowance in Wales due to caring for people with fewer than 4 points. And the government's justification for this suffering is completely flawed. Joseph Rowntree Foundation finds that 60% of recipients scoring 4 or fewer points are already in employment in England and Wales, rising to 63% in my constituency of Caerfyrddin. The UK government claims its amendments to this bill will lessen the blow, but we'll have to wait until after the second reading to see them. But the government seems set to penalise people who become disabled after the arbitrary cut-off date of November 26. So can I ask the government what data has informed these concessions? Specifically, what evidence suggests that people can pick and choose when they become sick or become disabled? Because that, to me, looks like discrimination. Legal experts for the Equity Union agree that it could be unlawful on the grounds of arbitrariness. And arbitrariness looks half-baked in considering PIP assessment review, which will only be published in autumn 26. The UK government's amendments to this bill do not address the fundamental injustice at the heart of these measures, and is plunging 150,000 people into poverty rather than the 250,000 really a marker of success? Is it only punishing people who will get ill or disabled in future, or those who turn 18 later, really a sign of a fair and compassionate welfare reform? I call on honourable friends across the House, particularly my friends opposite, to vote against this cruel bill tonight. The Labour UK government must abandon these damaging plans entirely and instead create a welfare system founded on dignity, on equity, on compassion, that is developed with disabled people and representative organisation. Plaid Cymru will be voting for the reasoned amendment this evening submitted by my honourable friend from York Centre and against the second reading of this bill.
Diane Abbott.
Millions of disabled people will listen, view or read about this debate and its consequences and feel fear. Because for some members of the House, this is just an afternoon's political cut and thrust, but for the disabled, it is the rest of their lives. Members will have heard earlier that we should be concerned about the rising trajectory of welfare spending in this country. Ministers say this all the time. But what about the rising trajectory of tax avoidance or the rising trajectory of salaries in the City of London? Why must people on welfare bear all the opprobrium and have the money taken out of their pockets? We are the Labour Party, and we have historically stood up against injustice. Why are we stepping away from this today? Anybody who has ever had anything to do with the welfare system knows that it needs reform. I deal month after month with dozens of people who are struggling with the welfare system. But it's not that people don't accept it needs reform. The problem is these reforms, which are unfair, ill thought out, and in the end, focused on saving money. And on the question of the personal independence payment, Too many members talk about PIP as if it's too easy to claim, that people are gaming the system or even engaged in some sort of scam. The truth is that PIP is generally not merely difficult to claim, but humiliating to claim, and any reform should deal with that. There are so many practical problems with this bill. It is being rushed through in a week, which is ridiculous. There has been no formal consultation with the people whose lived experience it is concerned with. It is not a coincidence that not a single organisation which speaks to the disabled supports this legislation. And it will become law before two important reviews, well into PIP itself, the Timms review, and the Keep Britain Working review, will actually report. So these reviews, and in particular the Timms review, will actually be a dead letter. And because it is too late to change the face of the bill, members are being asked to vote purely on the basis of verbal assurances from ministers. None of us would come to an important arrangement with our council on the word of councillors. So, with all due respect, why are we expected to vote for a law which will affect millions of people's lives and drives hundreds of thousands of people into poverty purely on the basis of what ministers claim they are going to do? I myself continue to oppose this bill on moral, legal and political grounds. And let me say this, there will be, as I said, millions of disabled people who will either watch this debate on the television, hear about it from their friends and family, or read about it in the newspaper. They will not be able to believe that the Labour Party is putting legislation through like this. Because, you know, if this legislation means anything at all, it means money coming out of the pockets of the disabled. Otherwise, what is the point of it? If you're going to save money in this financial year, disabled people have to lose money. It will be shocking to so many people listening and hearing about this, that Labour ministers are standing up and putting this through in order to hit Treasury targets. Even at this late stage, I urge colleagues to think about the people that put us here and withdraw this bill. It cannot be right that we have had a concession so late in the day, even in the course of the debate. If ministers were proud of this debate, if ministers were proud of what they're doing, concessions wouldn't be coming so late in the day. So, as I say, we should, even at this late stage, withdraw this bill.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've been sitting here for about over 5 hours, I think, and there's been so many changes and concessions. So many changes and concessions, I really don't know what we'll be voting for at the moment. And this is no way to bring such an important bill into this chamber for, when it's so important to people's lives. The Independent Alliance stand firmly against this bill because both it is unfair and unworkable, and no member of this House should, in any good conscience, vote for it. Of course, abuse of the welfare system is unacceptable, but we all agree on that. But this bill does not target fraud. What it does target is the most vulnerable and the most needy in our communities.
Well said.
There's been some excellent contributions today, and very powerful contributions. And like everybody else here, I have constituents who have shared their story. Mine is of Joe, a constituent of mine in Leicester South. Joe is actively suicidal. All sharp objects and medications have been removed from his home. The only reason Joe is not in hospital is that there are no beds available. Yet Joe has been told she is not ill enough to qualify for personal independence payment under this system. Is this the kind of society we want to build? This bill is not just unfair, it is also unworkable. The government is asking members to vote for cuts now based on the promises that they will help people back into work in the future. Yet the supporting evidence from the Office for Budget Responsibility won't even be available until October. The process has been rushed, the consultation has been inadequate, and the system being proposed is cruelly simplistic. Scoring 4 points on a single activity will become the deciding factor whether somebody receives life-changing support. According to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, cutting disabled people's benefit won't magically create suitable jobs, especially in those areas of the country that have long had weaker jobs market. A disability that's close to my heart, which is visual impairment. Madam Deputy Speaker, there are 2 million people in this country living with a visual impairment. That is about to double by the year 2050. Yet 25% of employers would not be willing to make workplace changes, and 48% did not even have accessibility recruitment processes. And there's nothing addressing this issue. The government figures estimate that these changes will push approximately 150,000 people, including thousands of children, into poverty. There is no credible employment support plan for them. There is no guarantee that those whose conditions fluctuate will be treated fairly, and these changes will disproportionately punish people with mental health like Joe. Politics is not a game. We cannot balance the national budget on the backs of disabled people, and the public know this. I will be supporting the reason amendment by the Honourable Member for York Central, because this bill is simply unfair. Even I'm not quite sure what it stands for at the moment. It is unworkable and it's unworthy of this House's support, and I urge all members to do the same. Thank you.
German.
Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's safe to say that the topic of today's debate has been my overriding focus in recent months, and I want to thank my constituents and all organisations for their input, as well as the Secretary of State and the wider DWP team for listening to concerns and indeed acting on them with recent amendments. This bill will raise the Universal Credit Standard Allowance by the largest increase since the 1970s. It will help 3.9 million families with an average gain of £265 a year, bringing us closer, finally, to ensuring that every family can afford the essentials without relying on charity or community support. I wholeheartedly welcome this as part of the government's wider efforts to rebalance universal credit to better reward work and improve basic adequacy, along with an end to reassessment for those with the most severe conditions and to work capability assessments, the right to try work without the risk of losing existing entitlement, and crucial increased investment in health and into work pathways. But the undeniable focus of this bill has been changes to personal independence payment. I truly thank my Clwyd North constituents for their time and their trust in sharing their stories so openly. To them, I say I hear you and will continue to represent you. So many have been desperately